Test.
Welcome all. My name is LorenMJ, and I am here with the latest weekly episode of my cybersecurity show. Last week we did not have one because of the holiday. Today, to get started, we don't have any listener feedback, so we'll move on to the news. And before we get to the news exactly, I'm going to put out a bulletin. I'm going to share this bulletin that was put out by the United States Department of Homeland Security. So it includes some interesting information, and I'd like to share that first. It is declassified, so we can share it. So let's begin, shall we? And here it is. Now this is directed toward the railroad system. So typically, you would put these out, it would be for everybody, but this one is just really for the Railway Alert Network, called RAN. However, I consider this pretty good information for everyone, and I don't want it to just slip under the radar just because it wasn't directed to a wide enough audience. So I thought I'd cover it. This is an alert from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. They released a National Terrorism Advisory Bulletin. It's NTAS, the National Terrorism Advisory System. The U.S. remains on heightened alert due to persistent and lethal threats by what they call lone offenders and small groups motivated by ideological beliefs and or personal grievances. So these are basically extremists motivated to violent action. They could be a single person or a small group. They do target, tends to be ideological or like a response to some threat or a perceived threat. So potential targets have included public gatherings, faith-based institutions, churches, synagogues, different communities like the LGBTQ plus community, schools, racial and religious minorities, specific government facilities and personnel. Also, of course, any U.S. critical infrastructure would want to pay attention as well. The media has also been targeted, and really any perceived ideological opponent of theirs is probably on the table. What they did was they published this as sort of a bulletin of what's been going on lately. And apparently there's been a few, I guess you might say some patterns emerging. And the patterns include things like you've probably seen in the news, like the bar in Colorado Springs. But there are also attacks against Jewish synagogues and other things. Some of the things have a little bit of interesting, I guess, similarities. So some of those are, I'll go through here. I think there is I think it's under key findings here. Some of these key findings were kind of interesting. Let's see if it does. Yeah, here it is. So here's some of these interesting key findings, and I thought worth reading. 3 out of 15 of these attacks that they analyzed, the perpetrator wrote a manifesto. So basically a copycat or trying to inspire other people that are of similar mindset. They also, 6 of the 15 suspects wore body armor. So a person, of course, a person who has access to body armor is not necessarily a potential perpetrator. However, do you know someone that owns body armor? Do you know why they own body armor? Is it part of their job to own body armor? Well, then they're probably fine. But what if a person it does not have a reason to have body armor, but yet obsesses about things like that? So that's it might be something worth remembering, not necessarily alerting someone to, but if it, along with other type of factors, could mean something. So it's worth reporting if multiple of those factors are involved in the same person. 73% of the 15 suspects had a social media presence on various platforms. Some were alternative, and also some were encrypted. So you might think of maybe like a Telegram stream, or like, what do they call it? A Telegram group, Telegram chat group, that sort of thing. So they gave a couple of demonstrations of how this worked. For example, the April 12th Brooklyn, New York attacker on the R-Line train, he apparently this guy Frank James But anyway, you could find, various things about their social media presence, the things that they were doing on social media, and so it sort of alerted people. It should have alerted people that something is wrong. Something's in their mind that's motivating them or pushing them to do these things. Also, on the May 14th Buffalo, New York attack, this person had a diary and had a 672-page online diary that demonstrated their commitment. So, I would call that a manifesto. I mean, it's something to watch out for, I guess. If I'm not saying tell on your friends, that sort of thing. It's just sort of a kind of thing that makes you go, why does a person own body armor? Why does a person have these sort of outrageously strong, odd, alternative views of the truth? Why would a person have that? Now, understandably, a lot of people deviate from a norm. However, if they deviate from a norm in many different ways, then that's worth noting. Sort of a if you see something, say something type of report. In any case, I thought this alert was important enough that it should go beyond the railway, and I thought about putting it here, just so people know things like this are happening. I mean, it certainly makes me want to be more aware, to kind of look around, notice people more, and find out what they're like, what they're doing, what their interests are, that sort of thing. So I thought this was sort of interesting. But that is not necessarily the news. That was just a comment I wanted to start with. So let's begin with our stories here. And in story one, I was going to say, let's go to the story one. Now this one it's about an Android app. And yet again, we're talking about Android apps. And I think some of these we mentioned actually before. They're listed here. They're a telepad, PC keyboard, and lazy mouse. The reason this keeps coming up is because the people that develop these apps are not fixing them. They're not taking them down. So this keeps coming up. It'll keep coming up as news, and you'll keep seeing it in the news because the developer is not doing anything. So it needs to be pulled off or something of that nature, but yet it's still available. So I really don't know what else to do about this other than, perhaps there's going to be someone from the Google Play Store or someone from the app stores, should really think about these things. Look at them, vet them more. We don't all have to be an Apple store, but, let's be reasonable, For my next story, by the way, that story, I always do this, but I sometimes forget. This story was called Android Keyboard Apps with 2 million Downloads Can Remotely Hack Your Device. It was by wow. That would be really hard to pronounce. Sorry about that. And this was put out by securityaffairs.co. If you would like, I'll put a link in the description, of course. Story 2. Let's go to story 2. Now this one is, the story is, ICE accidentally released the identities of 6,252 immigrants who sought protection in the U.S. by Hamad Aliaziz of the Los Angeles Times. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's ICE, accidentally posted the names, birthdays, and nationalities of detention locations of more than 6,000 immigrants who claim to be fleeing things like torture, persecution. So this was available on his website. Talk about the most vulnerable people that need care and need discreet help. And yet they did not get it. This was a serious failure in policy, and this needs to be fixed. I just can't say it enough. And there's plenty of criticism, and I don't want to pile on. It's not my job to pile on. I'm just calling things as I see them, which is policy could really help here, and it needs to be dealt with. With that, let's move on to the next story. This one has China accused of flooding social media with spam to crowd out protest news, by Dan Milmo at The Guardian. There are many ways of taking things and hiding them. So the internet's the internet, right? Everything that's on the internet just stays on the internet. It just seems to always be out there. But what can you do about it? Well, apparently the Chinese government has decided to just flood the news with other information so as to distract. We know that there is a serious events going on in China, a lot of protests. So to prevent those protests from gaining notoriety, China has created a large-scale operation. Of course, it's sponsored by the Chinese government, or it's outsourced to a surrogate, like a troll farm. What these are is these are like nuisance posts that also have the same hashtag, so that it'll be confusing when people go to that hashtag. They'll find different news about different things, and so that maybe lose interest and not keep reading. So that's the idea. The nuisance posts were advertisements for escorts, just an attempt to obscure things. But they would have things like tracking codes attached so that they could gauge how much these posts were working. So networks of thousands of accounts were posted, usually targeting Mandarin-speaking audiences, and they would use the same hashtags over and over just to try to diffuse or make those hashtags less valuable, is what it is. So they would distribute high volumes of posts on Chinese language hashtags, and they would post the locations that were the same locations, but instead of being about the protest, they were advertisements for escorts, dating services, they were pornography, they were short video clips advertising some random service, sometimes just random strings of English words, and they just had tracking mechanisms in them to see how well they were doing. So misdirection, obscuring, is typical, pretty typical, I guess. Let's move on to the next story. This one I thought interesting because it's an attack against what you call critical infrastructure. In this case it's a power station, two substations, two power substations. I actually live near one, so this kind of makes me want to take a look at it a little more carefully. Like, I always see it locked, and of course it has a big fence around it, and I would notice if someone were there, because it would be an odd thing, because it's so desolate. But it is in the middle of my city, and it's not desolate in the case of like it's out in the field somewhere. It is actually right up against the road, a very popular road. But inside it, there's never anyone there. So if someone were there, it would kind of be obvious, I suppose. In any case, the story is NC County announces curfew as nearly 40,000 customers remain without power after two substations damaged by gunfire. This is by Nicole Grether at CNN. So if you live near power plants or any kind of junction buildings or these substations, it might be worthy of a look. How far away am I from this? Would cameras collect any information? Would my cameras be pointed that way, collecting things? Or could I be very close to it and also be a target? Or could I perhaps be within the radius of this attack? There was also some misdirection in this as well. Apparently it was vandalism. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly why they call it an attack and then they call it vandalism, because it's gunfire. It's bullets that were fired into this substation. It wasn't random. It was on two distinct substations. There was a woman who claimed she had information and she posted that on Facebook. She was investigated and it turned out to be false information. At one location, a gate was torn down, taken off its hinges. Although that's not the only damage. There was significant damage. They said the damage was in the millions. And given its critical infrastructure, the FBI is investigating too. I also wondered if they were able to cause so much damage by just a few well-placed bullets that perhaps it's worth taking a look as in, like, if it was targeted. Did someone have inside knowledge of this? Anyway, it's kind of interesting. Hold on one second. Sorry about that little interruption. All right, with that, let's continue on to the next story. Pardon me. This story is FBI Director warns of possible influence operations via TickTock. This is by Shona Chen at Axios.com. This is over concerns about ByteDance's alleged ties to the Chinese government. They, of course, own TickTock. That's ByteDance's property. And they are a Chinese company. And there is no possibility of a company that is Chinese without the Chinese government involved, because that's how they work. So this, to me, is it's really just a critical look at TickTock, and it's not out of order. TickTock, of course, is it matters. It matters that people really need to be concerned about this app and what its use is. It should be vetted critically, and of course, it's directed at children as well. Without being overtly directed at children, it is directed at children. It's one of those things where they sort of skirt it. How do you prevent a person that is, say, 10 years old from telling, going onto a website or using an app, downloading an app, and then saying that they're 13 or 15 or 18 or whatever? How do you stop that? Well, children, they lack fundamental understandings of the world, so it is critical that parents be aware of what's going on with their children. That would be very good. So, I don't think I'll be interested in your promotion. I'm not really interested in buying things that you're selling. So, I'd appreciate it if you just sort of move on. Anyway, so, of course, the chief operating officer, her name is Pappas. She testified in a Senate hearing that the U.S. data is not stored in China, so it doesn't share any information with the Chinese government, according to her. But of course, this is a company just telling you something. So, can they be trusted? Well, we'll see. I guess time will tell. But this wasn't on purpose, but this did happen to come up as my next story, just because it happened to be something that I found in the way that I find things. And that is my next story, which is related to TikTok. It is TikTok's viral challenges keep luring young kids to their deaths, by Olivia Carlville at Bloomberg. So in this case, this young child, she was about 9, I think. She wrapped a metal dog leash around her neck and then hooked the buckle to the top of a wardrobe door hinge and then hung herself. Of course, her 5-year-old brother was watching her. She was hanging 2 feet off the ground and kicking and desperately scratching at her neck and, of course, suffocating. So he told his parents, I guess, went and got them, but it was too late. She was buried 2 days later in her princess dress. Just sad. So sad. I guess this is called the Blackout Challenge. And this is just one of those incidental things. I guess they're trying to say it as incidental. Of course, you'd like to point to TikTok and say, well, why did this happen? And is it because the algorithm is telling this young girl that that she should do this? Is the algorithm targeting her? Could that be what's happening? Well, there was a small group that analyzed this, and I wasn't quite sure what to make of this part of the story because let me just read it. It says a small group from Trust and Safety spent days reviewing every clip that Antonella had recently watched. According to 2 team members who saw a summary of the internal report into her death and requested anonymity because they weren't authorized to talk to media, there were a lot of videos. The report said Antonelli, whose school was closed because of COVID-19, was on the app as much as 10 hours a day. The group also learned that, like many kids her age, Antonelli had claimed she was older than 13 when she created her account. There was nothing in her history or that the app suggested that she watched this. So in other words, there's no evidence, like right here it says, there's no evidence that the algorithm was involved in this. First of all, who are these people? So it says the Palermo prosecutor's office opened an investigation. So this is Italy's privacy watchdog. And then it's immediately the next paragraph says a small group from Trust and Safety spent days reviewing every clip. Now, I'm a little lost here. What is this group from Trust and Safety? Is this part of the Palermo's prosecutor office? Is it someone else? Of course, this is related. It's not from that young lady. This was a different young lady. She was a 10-year-old girl, and she was found hanging by a towel rack, from a towel rack with a bathrobe belt around her neck. So, that's similar. Of course, another victim. I found this confusing. I don't know if this is just a Bloomberg thing or what, but this is even if it's only 2 people per year, it's a plague. If it's going to kill children, why are there? How does this happen? How do you keep a person that is younger than 13 off of an app? Well, I mean, certainly parents should be aware, right? Are parents aware? Do parents watch what their kids watch? I mean, you're responsible for everything your child does on their phone, right? You are expected legally to view and know about everything that your child is doing. So you can't get in front of a judge and say, well, I didn't know. That is not a valid statement. You are expected to know everything your child's doing. And you can. It may cost something, but you can actually go to these places and request data, or request data be removed, or get the code for your child's phone, and make sure that you can know what's going on. I mean, there's just so many of these things. I mean, there was this challenge called Skullbreaker Challenge. I just can't understand why people would do these things. Have talks with your children. Make sure they understand that these things are dangerous. And I don't know, maybe block TickTock on your network. It's worth doing, unless you're going to trust that company to do something about it. I don't see that they have earned any trust whatsoever. Not just because of the previous article, but they've done nothing to earn parents' trust to me. So why do you allow this? In any case, let's just move on. Just sad. All right, let's go on. So now let's go to the next one. This is an article called Tampa Police Chief Resigns After Dodging Traffic Ticket. So this wasn't her traffic ticket. It was actually her husband. I guess he was driving a golf cart, and he was stopped. And then she tried to get out of that ticket, get her husband out of the ticket, I suppose. Kind of strange. I mean, you lost your job over a ticket. I mean, why are you not just paying the ticket? I don't know. Wow. So, apparently, according to the deputy's body camera, she just said, I guess she was in the golf cart. And she says, "I'm hoping you will let us go tonight," after she flashed her badge. Yeah, that's bad. Here's the thing about people that are in the in a police organization, or in any organization with authority, or even those that are certified. For example, I'm certified. I have a CISSP. So there are policies that I agree to. I agree not to violate the law, for example. And I would lose my certification if I did. So this is how it happens. If people, here's this police chief, right? She's at the top of this organization, and she tries to get out of this ticket. And then she loses her job, of course. So, whatever. So here's the mayor, basically saying what I'm trying to say here. So, Mayor Jane Castor, she says, "The Tampa Police Department has a code of conduct that includes high standards for ethical and professional behavior that apply to every member of our police force." According to the chief, it involves the chief too. So you're expected to abide by and enforce these standards. Lead by example. I think I would have just paid the ticket. I would have kept my mouth shut and just let my husband, who was the driver, deal with the situation, and whatever ticket came out of it, just pay it. I think I would have done that. But then again, people react in funny ways. Rather than just taking a breath and saying, how could this work out in the long term? They sort of react on a fundamental level right away. Like, how dare you issue me a traffic ticket? I am the chief of police. Yeah, that's just not wise. So anyway, if you have any certification, like security certification, or if you work in security, you can be terminated for doing things like this. This is your job here. I've seen it. I've seen people terminated. There are people that are not allowed to work in security, even in IT security. They're not allowed to work in IT security because they violated the law, or were caught on camera doing something, or violated policy to some really horrible degree. It's just not something you do. And sorry, but yeah, there's sort of a higher standard, and you're going to be kept to that higher standard. So I don't know why that slipped the mind of a chief of police. I don't get it, but apparently it did. All right, back to technology here. So in this case, this I found interesting because the story is new zombinder platform binds Android malware with legitimate apps. This is by Bill Toulis, who we've quoted many times, from Bleeping Computer. So this is a platform, like something that a developer would use to make an app. And what they would do is they would take this app, they would take a malware, and they would pack it into the APK file, which is the distribution file that gets distributed by Android. So that what they did was they would put it and bind it into a normal app. So you have a perfectly fine app that is not malware, but you can bind malware to it. Of course, it also includes things like detection evading. It has a malicious payload. And here's a nice little ad that I guess they advertise themselves to other developers, where, if you would like to take advantage of it, I guess they pay you for it. I'm not sure. Maybe you get some sort of ad revenue. In any case, yeah, that happens. Wow. Okay. So, next story. And this is sort of, no honor among thieves, right? What this is called is cyber scammers are scamming each other and revealing dark web secrets along the way. This is by Danny Palmer, senior writer over at ZDNet. So in this case, what's going on here is that cyber criminals are losing millions of dollars to cyber criminals. So in other words, it's a war among thieves, I guess, where some people had all of their revenue stolen who are criminals. So they're criminals, a criminal organization, but another criminal organization attacked them and stole their revenue. And so then they ask for help, right? So it gives you this interesting look into what's going on in the cybersecurity space. It gives the authorities an interesting view of what's going on. Here's one thing. This is Max Wixley, a senior threat researcher at Sophos. He said this here. So there's a hidden sub-economy that isn't just a curiosity. It gives you insights into forum culture. So the forums are the places where they post these things. They post ideas. They buy and sell their services. They talk about strategies. And of course, this gives you these ideas of how they work as schemes. What their schemes are and how they work. So I thought this article was interesting because of that. Certainly, no user. It's an interesting takeaway. No user is immune. So, just being on these forums, even as a researcher, you're close to these people. You're close, and it's possible for you to get scammed. So this is upwards of millions of dollars too. This isn't a small amount. These people were bilked out of it for quite some time. Anyway, that's interesting. Okay, so that is our last article that we're going to talk about today. So the final thing I do, let's see. Let's go back to our outline here. I don't have any how-to instructional ready today. We were going to just talk about the next thing under section 1. However, I had an issue finding some, so we may just move on to 2. Hold on, let me clear my throat. Okay, sorry about that. We're going to move probably on to 2 next time. So what I've been doing is I've been going through the security domains, and I've been focusing on security domain 1 for quite some time now. So probably going to be moving on to 2 here quickly. But I sort of had a moment where I was trying to look back at what all I did, and I wasn't able to figure everything out. So chances are we'll just move on with 2 and just start from there. But we'll see how it goes. With that, our last part, which is what I call website or tool of the week. So the website or tool of the week that I would like to use or show you is it's called downforeveryone or justme.com. Now you may have gotten this if you went to maybe like if you search the internet and say, why is Twitter down or whatever. So you'll end up getting pushed to this place possibly. So what you can do is you can type in a request and say, is this down? For example, you could say, why is Facebook giving me problems? So you could type in Facebook. So is Facebook down or is it just me? And it will come back and say, no, we are not detecting problems right now, so Facebook's fine. And then, of course, you can report a problem if you're having a problem. So people report it, getting an error or it being slow or whatever. So in any case, you can also do this for any place. You could say, is Nike.com down or is it just me? And what it'll do is it'll check. Oh, it's just you. Nike's up. So I find it useful because you can check your own website and get a report on it. I do think that's interesting. You can see if services are up or down, like, HBO or Apple or whatever. This is useful for that. You can also use the short URL, which is downfor.io, which I think is nice. Nice to be able to put that in, to be able to just type it real quick, or to bookmark it. I thought this was a pretty good tool to use. I don't use it terribly a lot, but definitely during troubleshooting, this is something you want to have somewhere, to be able to quickly reach. For example, you could be using Signal, the app, or something like that, and then it gives you problems. So, you'd want to come here and check it. Hey, thanks for the follow, Infinity. Appreciate it. Love the TTY. You could be I'm going to say maybe a Linux guy. I'm not sure. But I'm going to take a guess. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it so much. In any case, that's my website tool of the week. With that kind of ends our show. So, sorry for the short show. I've been doing a couple of short shows here recently. I don't intend to do that. I tend to stay right at about an hour or just under. I do this personally for a couple of reasons. One is I don't see anyone else doing this kind of thing regularly, and I really enjoy seeing it. So I follow people that have podcasts or whatever, and they're in cybersecurity. And what I do is I follow it so that I can get my credits as a continuing education. Because to maintain my certification, I have to have credits. So that means I have to go watch something or be involved in some sort of educational project. And this is that. It's an educational project that I have undertaken to be able to weekly make this show. I count the time that I spend toward my certification, toward my education and my certification. This I equate it to, scheduling a room at the local library and inviting people and saying, hey, would you like help, navigating Facebook? Or would you like help securing your Facebook or securing Twitter? Or would you like help understanding your computer, or what you need to know? Or parents, do you want to learn, how to keep your kids safe, or whatever? I've seen a lot of people do a lot of different things, so that's kind of what I'm doing here. And I'd always like feedback. How is it going? Is my outline of the things that I cover pretty good? I mainly it's news, right? I go through the news, but I also go through the news with commentary. I'm not just going to read you news. What I'm doing is I'm saying I consider this newsworthy because of a reason. For example, this could teach us a lot about, if you're a parent, pay attention to this. If you're an Android user, pay attention to this. If you're an Apple user, pay attention to this. I like to be useful because there's a flood of cybersecurity news. But having someone make sense of it, there's not a flood of that. And so that's what I'm intending to do. So I do appreciate the follows. Come check me out. Watch the recorded versions. Whatever you're doing, I appreciate it. Always looking for feedback. You can find me on YouTube. Same name, LorenMJ. You can find me on Twitter under LMJ_OU. I've recently also started a Mastodon, and you can email me, of course, LorenMJ@gmail.com for business inquiries. With that, I think I will go ahead and sign out, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. Thank you for the follow, Infinity, and others who have checked me out today. I appreciate it so much. With that, stay safe out there. It's a rough world.